All right, so here are the videos to kind of walk you through the stuff that happened in your papers or in your theme paragraphs. So we're going to start with like the smaller things that I think everybody can work on immediately, and frankly, we've been working on this throughout the past couple days, past week or so. So this has to do with like general sentence structure and word choice. So what I'm going to show you here is an example of a sentence that is problematic. All right. So let's read this together. Grab a marker here. So after being stuck under the tree for some time and talking George, Ulrich had changed his mind about his enemy and decided that if his men found them first, he would not kill him, and instead asked his men to help him first. And in that moment he asked his enemy to be his friend. Quote, I've changed my mind. If my men come first, you shall be the first to be helped. I ask you to be my friend. After which George changes his mind, and he accepts his request. I will be your friend. Take a moment. This is one entire sentence. That is insanity. Look at how long that is. And so let's take a look at where this kind of goes off the rails a little bit here. So after being struck under the tree for some time and talking George, so like the comma is where the idea ends. So it actually saying after being stuck under this tree for some time and talking George. That doesn't make sense. I think the student is trying to say George and Ulrich. So that would be comma here. Wait, what? Actually, I don't even think that's right. I think Ms. Hain doesn't know what's going on. I think maybe the student was trying to say and talking to George. Ulrich had changed his mind about his enemy. Now, this is where I might end that sentence because that is one complete thought. There are two thoughts going on in this, or not two thoughts. There are two ideas that are combined properly. It's the fact that they got stuck under the tree, and after talking, Ulrich had changed his mind. So those are two ideas. Fine, cap it there. Do not keep going, because then, and decided if his men, blah, blah, blah. So like, then you've got this, if the men came to find them, and decided that if his men had found, here, I'm going to grab a highlighter here. And decided that if his men had found them first, he would not kill him and instead ask his men to help him first. So this is kind of another idea that I would make a sentence. The other thing that I would point out is that the student uses the word first twice in one sentence. Come on. Oh! So, okay. This is another idea. So now we've got two sentences. We've got this sentence, and we've got this sentence, and then we've got that sentence. Now we've got another one. In that moment, he asked his enemy to be his friend. Okay, notice how this one sentence has three different ideas in it. Not to mention, look at this. This is all a quote, and this quote literally says the exact same thing that the student just said. That like, oh, he changed his mind, wanted him to be his friend, he asked him to be his friend. Like that, the quote says the same thing, so the student is literally repeating himself. Him or herself, I have no idea who this is. So here's my suggestion. Take a look at how I changed this. So if you take a look at, and this is, I did this. This is not a student example. So after being stuck under the tree and being forced to talk with George, Ulrich had changed his mind about his enemy. So there, just like I said, I changed up the wording a little bit. And then look at this. I add a transition here. In fact, so that transition here, that's good. You want a transition to show relationship between ideas. In fact, Ulrich had proclaimed that if my men come first, you shall be the first to be helped. Notice how this student said that up here, but now I have combined that idea with the quote. So now I'm not repeating myself. Then the next sentence, the magnitude of this statement is captured when Ulrich claims, I ask you to be my friend, to which George agrees. There. Again, I have combined what the student says here to the quote that's provided there. So I've split this up, and I've used transitions to show the relationship between ideas. And I don't know if you noticed, but I used a vocab word. Ha 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 ha. So like this to me, this up here, this shows me that there's a lack of proofreading and careful reading. So the student needs to take more time reading over their work, because this is just jammed together, and they need to be able to identify like what ideas do I have in these different sentences, and how can I make these sentences make sense and work separately. But let's take a look at another one. So this is a separate paper. So this student starts. Nope. This action would prove to be a mistake, as later in the story, both George and Ulrich are, quote, pinned beneath the beech tree, and are later found by wolves. What? This is not a complete thought. And are later found by wolves. I want to punch somebody, because I have no idea. Who found them? What? That's not a complete thought. So take a look at how I fix this. This action would prove to be a mistake, as later in the story, both George and Ulrich are pinned beneath the beech tree. Got it? I didn't change that. Because the men are unable to move. Look at that transition. Their imminent death. Oops, that should say happens. Good thing I caught it. Happens as, something that's imminent can't happen. Approaches as wolves run towards them. So look at that. I even made a mistake, but look at I'm proofreading and I fixed it. So because the men are unable to move, providing some context to this, the tree is making them unable to move. Their imminent death approaches as the wolves run toward them. So rather than using a quote where it's just like one word, which is so random, instead, what they want to do is, why don't you just summarize the event? I have no idea what they want me to get out of this. Wolves. I think what the student is trying to articulate is that the approaching, the tree pinned them, making them incapable of moving. Therefore, their death is imminent as the wolves come get them. So, got it. That makes sense. This does not. So, take a look at your own paragraphs. When you're examining your word choice or your sentence structure, take a look at the following. Do you have any insanely long sentences? And here I provide you some feedback of like, typically when it's typed, more than 2 lines is kind of a lot, okay? And here I'm trying to let you know, split up longer sentences and use strong transitions, okay? So split up longer sentences into what ideas are you trying to express. You don't want, you don't want to have more than 2 ideas that you're juggling in a single sentence. And that's not me dumbing it down. That's me trying to make your ideas clear. You're working with some pretty complex stuff, and so you don't want to have too much going on. Otherwise, your reader loses focus. So don't have too many ideas floating around in a single sentence. That's why we have sentences, is to split up our ideas. Otherwise, we would never have to use punctuation ever. We just word vomit all over. So make sure you don't have any insanely long sentences. Then take a look, are there any sentences that are incomplete thoughts? So that is a fragment, right? So for example, like this one, where it says, and they are later found by wolves. That's not a complete thought. Miss Hain, how do I know if it's a complete thought? Well, think if you were in a conversation and you randomly said, and are later found by wolves. Would people around you be confused? Probably. So they wouldn't be confused, or at least they'd be less confused if you said, because the men are unable to move, their imminent death approaches as wolves run towards them. At least they'd be like, okay, I understand what you said, but I don't know why you said it. But if you were to scream this, people would be like, okay, this person, we need to get away from them. And then also, just too many poopy verbs. I don't have a specific, these sentences have them. It's not something I focused on in these examples simply because I think that we've been working on them a lot. So in general, y'all need to look at your verb usage. That's a reason why we started looking at them in our or in our papers for the personal essays. So in general, that's what you need to be doing, is looking at poopy verbs and fix them.